This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptile. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
Hey guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast. Here bringing you the great news from the banned and restricted announcement and what it means financially. So obviously no changes to all formats, which is terrible. So let's take it away.
Yeah. So we're going to go in ascending order of age in regards to the format, standard being our newest format. And there were no changes there, which I think was to be expected. The format's a week old. You can't ban Field of the Dead right now.
But it will be.
Look, I don't want to say it will be. I think people are going to figure out how to play mono red against it.
Yeah.
There's no Pyroclasm in the format. We're not going to get that or Volcanic Fallout back. But eventually somebody's going to remember that you can play Tybalt in your main deck.
I mean, we have Deafening Clarion, but I think that's probably, like, the only thing you have to worry about. It's just, like, it feels bad not having a meaningful way to interact with lands.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the last time that happened, they banned Block Constructed forever. Because we had a gate deck you couldn't interact with. It just won out of nowhere.
Yep.
Whatever. It's stupid.
The interesting thing is how many times they've printed when a creature ETBs now or dies, it no longer triggers anything, but they can't put that anywhere for a land. I mean, that would skew older formats a lot. It really, really would.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you could just make it permanents entering the battlefield.
Yeah.
Don't cause abilities to tap. Or don't cause abilities to happen. Like, that's fine, I guess. It just has to be appropriately costed. Yeah. Or, I don't know, Aether Flash seems like it would be good. Whenever a creature ETBs, it takes 2 damage.
Yeah. That's a card I've liked for forever. But it's also interesting that Alpine Moon and Field of Ruin both exit the format at a very inopportune time.
I was actually talking to a friend of mine about it last night, and we came to the conclusion that Ghost Quarter should be a card that is almost always in Standard. Because it's enough of a drawback that has, like, little upside.
Yeah.
But just enough that, like, when there's a problem, like Field of the Dead, you can do something about it. You can actually impact it in a meaningful way, and, like, it doesn't hurt.
No.
Really, to have it there.
Yeah, but in the end, they'll most likely give us until next set. We have B&R in November again. Nobody can figure out why there's this random one kind of in about a month. We might see something then if nothing happens in the meantime, but the format is in its nascent stages. We saw basically Mono Golos in the Star City top 4 this past weekend. Matt Nass was the only outlier playing Simic Flash, but it was still, an Oko deck at heart with the jellyfish on top, the Flash jellyfish, Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah, for sure.
Both decks played that. We basically watched Golos be a non-factor in most of those matchups. It was just a nice long game card. One version played Fires, which is pretty nice because you could wish and then play your wished for card immediately that next turn.
Yeah.
And so there was some interesting play. They were just very long matches that were very boring, and they stopped focusing on Standard pretty shortly into day 2 and then again in the top 4.
Yeah.
But this doesn't really impact anything. If you didn't get in on Field of the Dead before rotation, you were going to miss out anyway because it's putting up results in Modern and Legacy.
Everything.
Yep. And the only thing to look at in regards to this would have been Fires, but because people had been brewing with that already, LSV had put out a couple lists in the CFB sign up for only newsletters that were played it in Modern. The cards had a price tag for a while, and then if Golos was another card you could have bought in on pretty cheaply up until the beginning of this weekend. I think it was sub $2 until early on Saturday, at which point it shot to 4 or 5, and it's not coming back. It is definitely a card that I slept on. I think I might have a copy or 2 just from my judge boxes, and it's not a card I wished I'd ever bought more of because it just looked like this slow plotting Dirtly card, and the decks that I had seen using this card leading up to the event, sorry, when I say this card, I meant Field of the Dead in this instance, were actually more Simic-based food style decks that eventually ramped out into Field of the Dead. So my attention was focused somewhere else. It wasn't on Golos, so I just missed this card entirely until this weekend.
Yeah, I expected it to do things. I just didn't think it would be the search for a land part that did things, because I figured with Scape Shift rotating, the card was just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, Field of the Dead doesn't matter, because there's no reliable way to fetch it up except Golos, which is like you're tapping out for a body that doesn't do much and, just getting the land.
Yeah.
And like Solemn Simulacrum isn't great, but it's enough.
Yeah.
So.
And, thus financially, the action was really on Friday and early day Saturday. After that, Standard's probably just going to be kind of float along until somebody figures out how to counterplay Field of the Dead properly. And at that point, that's when you'll see those pieces shoot up. Whether it's going to be something like Assassin's Trophy to limit the damage on a single copy of Field of the Dead, or it's something like Tybalt, which stops the life gain from Hydroid Krasis, so the mono-red deck that plays Torbane and the red enchantment that pings face can just get the job done. I don't know yet, because we're still very early in this format.
I didn't think there'd be much to change there. It did just click, though. November ban announcement.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because of Eternal Weekend.
Okay, it is the Monday after Eternal
The Monday
Weekend.
after.
Yeah.
So if they want to change Legacy or Vintage, they can wait to get a real paper result.
Yeah, there you go.
Just clicked.
So perfect. So trucking right along. Up next is Modern. Also saw nothing, but I don't think Modern needed anything.
It needs Splinter Twin unbanned. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't think Modern needed anything banned, put it that way.
That's fair.
I think that's the spot we're in. I think there's always room for stuff to come off the ban list, and this is one of the first weekends that we haven't seen Stoneforge Mystic put up a bunch of results. It is Urza that put up a bunch of results, and they're finally changing the shell to be a little more all-in combo surrounding Paradoxical Outcome, and that was your gainer.
Yeah.
That card was just a sleeper for a really long time. Not a lot of people knew why this card held no value up until about 2 weeks ago, because it is just an engine card.
Yeah, the card's bonkers.
It's been powering Vintage Storm for over a year now. It's insane in EDH. It just has no place really in Legacy, and there are more powerful things you could have been doing in EDH with Paradox Engine as opposed to Outcome.
Yeah.
So it kind of got overshined, but it stayed at sub $1 too long. That was the action, basically, for Modern. I checked on Urza because I have one. I was like, this might be a kind of deck now in its current stage of Paradoxical Outcome would be up my alley. And that card stayed the same. It's still hovering at about $43, $45. That's what it started at. That's what it's going to be until they ban Mox Opal for reasons.
Yeah.
Well,
and I mean, even after that, it may stick around just because like EDH exists.
Yeah.
And, as I tweeted out this weekend, distros are done with Modern Horizons. They were told there's no more coming, so.
Oh, I think Urza is absolutely going to hold its value right now. It might drop to somewhere in the 30s in the short run as people dump if it does get banned in Modern, but it should come back up. And Paradoxical Outcome should have reached a new floor. It had existed in the basement. It never actually reached its floor. It was always in the basement. It was just one of those cards I was waiting for something, and I guess not a lot of people saw the Urza deck as a place to go. I've been talking about this on the cast. I didn't think that deck was built properly. I thought there were other and better ways to kill, and none of them were ever Paradoxical Outcome when I was shaping the deck in my mind. I always wanted to charge my laser and shoot somebody with an Aether Flux Reservoir or 6 CMC Tez.
The EDH style.
Yeah, just combo off using Urza's ability to just dump your deck onto the battlefield and just pop somebody for 50. Like, to me, that was perfectly fine, but Outcome is a better way to do that. So, props.
Definitely.
There might still be a little bit of profit you can squeeze out of Grinding Station. That was in some lists last week. I know Josh McClain was looking for one before the Star City event, and I believe he did wind up with one. Made it to the top 4 on playing Warza on Matt Nass's team.
Yeah.
A name that we haven't seen on the Magic Fest and Pro Tour circuit for a little while.
Finally came out of time. KCI got banned.
Oh, well, he was a pod guy before that. He was playing.
That's true. Yeah, pod got banned too.
He was playing for me and my boys back when he came in second place and then won a GP back-to-back against Reed Duke both times.
That's true.
People forget about that. He lost the finals of Miami to Reed Duke and then beat Reed Duke the next time around.
Twice in a row.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. But there might still be some profits on Grinding Station just because it's a weird and unique card that definitely has EDH playability to it.
Yeah, for sure.
So you can look out for that. I think when I picked my single copy up for the deck, it was $2 to $3 somewhere in there. It's definitely a $5 card, easy because it's an uncommon from Mirrodin block, and who cares about Mirrodin block anymore, right?
Yeah, and those foils just keep randomly spiking. And it's like, guys.
Yeah, it's not the kind of card that we'll probably see in a standard set. Even if we were to revisit Mirrodin again, we might get something weird in a supplemental if there's some weird creatures entering the battlefield matters to create a million triggers deck in draft, but that's doubtful. So Grinding Station definitely has some opportunity, but I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
Moving along. Legacy, no changes. I don't think it needed any changes. I think we're in a good spot. I think we saw...
I've said I think this is the healthiest, the best Legacy has been in years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that by any means we needed to ban Deathrite, but the format's better for it. Flame me on Twitter. It's fine about how terrible it was with Deathrite.
Oh, Deathrite banning unlocked two of my favorite decks from Extended that were legacy pillars until Deathrite Shaman came along. So you're gonna get an argument you would always get an argument out of me for that card not being banned.
And it's just it got a little bit worse after War of the Spark and Horizons, but fine. It's still much better than it's been, and I think that now that we've seen the format start to settle, and outside of the Star City team event, whatever, Rug Delver, yes, it's very represented in the meta, but it's not putting up the results. The top 8s are diverse. The last big event, I think there were 5 or 6 unique archetypes in the top 8 that wasn't a team event.
Yep.
And you're consistently getting this variety, and it's not the same archetypes every time. And that, to me, is one of the bigger things. You had, there was Teamer Delver, 4C Loam, a couple other things at the last, Syracuse a couple weeks ago? It was just It's a very good, healthy spot that it's in. One of my favorite things that I've seen recently regarding timing of ban restricted announcements on the Legacy subreddit. No changes, and someone says no one saw that coming. Like, literally, I had no idea there was a BNR today. I mean, it's some people are calling for Ren and 6. I think that's wrong.
No way.
I think Legacy is at the point where you can actually unban things and it's fine.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people that think Earthcraft is fine to unban now. I don't disagree. We have so much kill anything removal now that it's not a terrible idea.
So before Jace the Mind Sculptor was unbanned in Modern, as vendors, when I would go out and I was doing a little more work, and we would sit down, it would be myself, my management from Troll, some guys like Adam Hotza. We would have the conversation of what would happen if you unbanned Jace the Mind Sculptor in Modern, and unbanned Jace, unbanned Splinter Twin. What would happen? Individual conversations. And then the thought experiment that always got floated was, what about Mana Drain in Legacy or Mind Twist in Legacy? What if you unban either one of those? What happens?
I think Mind Twist is probably fine.
I would agree with that.
I don't know about Mana Drain.
I think Pox is an underrepresented deck in that format. It's not as weird and oppressive as it is in Modern.
Agreed.
If a lot of people were on it. Like at the right time, Small Pox can be, or 8-rack, whatever you want to call it, can actually be really oppressive to a metagame. But there's a lot of things you can do with Pox that start with Chains of Mephistopheles and teaching people how to play that game, end with Contagion and how to lock people out of their mana sources with Mono Black.
Yeah.
And it offers up this weird, world of play. You even could bring back an old archetype called Dead Guy Al, which kind of led to Death and Taxes, which is basically
Picula. Now that he's a Hoffer.
Just black, white, or Esper stuff where you just played good creatures to the board, Bobs, you had Vindicates, Lilyvale, and you just kind of edged your way through the game with disruption both on board and from hand, kind of the way Death and Taxes does, but a little better because of the black elements where you can actually attack the hand. Then Vindicate can take care of any permanent. Now you have Utter End and some other tools to work with, so Dead Guy L minus Mind Twist is not a great archetype compared to Death and Taxes, but giving it Mind Twist might actually bring it back. So you could actually open up a handful of archetypes without shutting anything else out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought experiment. But as far as Legacy goes, I don't really know if there's much financial fallout for this. We saw a bunch of Depths decks, and I know some people are farting around with Alpine Moon in both Modern and Legacy, but I don't think that goes anywhere. That card's nothing. Elvish Reclaimer, there might still be a new floor to that, as every Depths deck plays that. We were talking about Mox Diamond prices in Discord this past weekend, and they're like 320 something new, but CK is only buying them at 62%. The cash value on a Mox Diamond is 62% retail on Card Kingdom right now, which to me seems low. So that means if they're only showing 4, they have a bunch more in backstock. They're not the people to go to sell them. So you need to look for the vendors that are going to all these GPs like 95 or Moose.
Yeah,
guys like that.
It's similar to what we covered, the other week, where it's like they're lowering the buy list on this stuff because, if we do see a recession, that value's going to go down. Sale price isn't going to change.
No,
but the buy price is.
Yeah, absolutely. So there might be some corner cases to get into. The Dreadhorde Arcanist deck, what used to be Izzet spells, is starting to show up in Legacy, and I haven't seen anything from within that deck. I heard that the Royal Scions did pop up in some lists.
Yes.
But I have, for both, in Vintage, but I have not been able to find that list yet.
Yeah. There's some of the Jeskai lists, a couple guys I know that play the format have been trying it out in some of those, and they've had decent results with it.
Yeah. So I think there's a little room on Dreadhorde Arcanist and maybe Magmatic Sinkhole foils for both Modern and Legacy play. Right now it's a 1 to 2 of, just taking a look at the Jeskai Mentor list, and Valakut in Modern is generally playing 1 of. Maybe Ponzo would be another deck to play 1 or 2 of, because once these cards are in your graveyard, there's nothing you can do with them. You just delve and that's it, right? So a premier removal spell. They're maybe quarter to 50 cents each, so the foils on those probably have a lot more room to grow. So that would be my place to look, though, unrelated to Arcanist itself.
Yeah.
But just that it's popping up now. As we move through from Legacy, Vintage is up next. So this is going to start, I think, both of our soapboxes with this BNR. When I opened it up and I saw no changes, what I was fine with was the fact that there were no changes. What I wasn't fine with was the fact that they didn't discuss why there were no changes.
Transparency, it's not that hard.
Which they have done before. They have done before.
Yeah.
When people were like, you need to fix this format, it is out of whack. In the next BNR, WotC said, well, we didn't for these reasons.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people who are looking to Vintage right now and saying there are a lot of weird things going on right now, and Narset is still not good, but it's one of many. What are you going to do about this? And Washington they were all shoulders. They just shrugged. Nothing.
Yep.
We got nothing for you because I guess they're still waiting for Vintage to shake out. Fine.
Yeah.
Combing over the top lists for Vintage, the meta looks to be the same, although in different proportions. The Jeskai Dreadhorde deck is a little more interesting. Just referencing, somebody was talking about the Scions in there, and I can't find that list. What I'm seeing are basically Dak and Narset. It's fine.
Yeah.
But the Scions giving your Dreadhorde Arcanist the ability to flashback Tinker, Time Walk, Time Twister seems extremely good.
Yeah.
And if that starts to take off, that becomes more popular, then a $10 or $11 Scion definitely becomes a $15 or $20 card, because Arcanist is played, sure, in Vintage, where it can cast all those busted RL cards I just mentioned, but you also have really good cards to flash back in Legacy and Modern. And this is a piece of tech that can honestly bubble up. And it doesn't make Izzet Delver better in Modern. You do switch over to more of that spells build, like I mentioned, which means you're probably moving away from things like Monastery Mentor and something to a little more robust, like Storm Chaser Mage.
Yeah.
But there's definitely opportunity to reset the floor on that card to a point where it just won't come back until you do something else.
Yeah. I was so happy with the last BNR, because they said, look, we listened to the community. We did these things. It was great. And it looked like, oh, we're paying attention to the format. Great. Like I said, I understand you don't want to make any changes with the EW coming up. Fine.
Yeah.
It still doesn't feel good, and it's still, I don't think, great right now for them to be doing that.
No, I don't think so either.
I think, like you said, though, Dreadhorde Arcanist is a good thing here. I think that's probably your best bet on what to get, honestly. There's a lot of room to grow. It's one of those cards that will benefit by Wizards just doing what Wizards does, which is continue to print, like, undercosted spells.
Yep.
Cantrips. Whatever. Doesn't matter. All of it's great. all of it's going to be a thing that's going to, as the game goes, it's just going to get better. Sure, you'll never beat the Recall. I mean, obviously. They're never printing something to flashback like that, but in Modern, like you pointed out, you almost have better options in Modern than you do in Legacy, because you get Fatal Push, you get Serum Visions, which not as good as Brainstorm, whatever. Path to Exile, Bolt. Like, there's a lot of really good things you can do there with it. And I mean, I know a couple people that are talking about, even in the Storm sideboard, just running it as a card advantage engine that gives you extra filter out of your Sleight of Hands, your Serum Visions, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's probably your best opportunity there. And I think that, there's... For a little while, it seemed like Narset's foil price has been a little suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if at this point, we only have one more checkpoint before we decide if that price is going to go up. And that's the BNR after EW. That's it.
English foil or Japanese alt art?
English foil.
Okay.
Japanese alt art is dumb.
Yeah, it's gone.
Like the number on it is stupid high.
Yeah.
But you can get a pre-release foil for $15. You can get a pack foil for like $20.
Yep.
Which is too cheap for that card. That should be way more. Sorry, like $30 for the.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh no, $20. That's too cheap, and I think that part of that is because you have a lot of players. Not that Vintage has a huge impact, but foil-wise, that's probably where most of that price is coming from. Besides collectors and EDH, is it's been kind of suppressed by the people that are like, well, this card's obviously getting banned, and you have one checkpoint left. So
what's that?
I think that's about where you're at there.
I think there might be one more card that has room for Vintage, and it's Crucible.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm still seeing it at about 21 for the Core 20 printing, and the de facto fast bond deck. I joked about it being the most expensive lands deck in history that doesn't run a library.
Yeah.
Is only, like I said, 21. It's a 4 of in this deck.
Yeah. And I think the other thing there is, lands hasn't really been figured out yet.
Nope.
And I think that once it is in Vintage, that card's going to go up.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a deck that the version that's hitting right now of Zaya's Bond isn't where it used to be before with the Raminap Excavator as well.
Yeah.
And it's also not running Zurin Orb. So you don't actually have the combo element in there. You have Crucible and you have Fast Bond. Yes, 4x of each, so that allows you to just recur everything and anything you want from your graveyard as you need to. It's just, this is not its final form. At one point in time, I was pretty sure there was a Walking Ballista in this deck as well, because you run 4 workshops in this deck. So aside from powering out all of 6 artifacts that have a CMC, Workshop does nothing. Even looking at the sideboard, there's no artifacts, and there's literally 6 cards Workshop can power out on turn 1, and then that's it. Everything else, every other artifact costs 0.
Yeah.
So when I originally looked at the deck and there was a Ballista, it made sense. So much like the Urza deck, this one's a little in flux.
Yeah.
But I do want to step back to Modern, because this skipped my mind because it was a quick conversation. Engineered Explosives is actually a card that is ridiculously cheap right now as well. We were seeing...
That card is so affordable, it's absurd.
Yeah, 2 printings.
It's still like around 10 to 15-ish.
Yeah.
For the Modern Masters one, the 5th Dawn actually recovered pretty nicely, but it's also just objectively better art.
Yep, it's $24.50 for 5th Dawn right now. But the weird thing was the market price and the average just kind of tailed down together, crossed several times, and now have solidified the fact that on the market, even the 5th Dawn version of Engineered Explosives is a $20 card.
Yeah.
This is not a card that solves all your problems when it comes to Urza and that deck, but it definitely puts in a lot of work.
Yeah.
So
and it's, for a long time, it was the best board wipe in Modern in terms of like playability. Every 3-color deck could run this. They ran about 2 of them because he needed a way to deal with permanence. And down to $10, $12 now is just mind-boggling to me.
I ran one of the sideboard of Valakut for a while, just to take care of Affinity and there's additional board wipe against small creature decks. So if you're looking to buy in on that card, now would be the time. The only place we'll see Sunburst come back is going to be a Master Set.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance that it will recover properly, and it is a card that is very much driven by the rest of the format. So you can buy in at 20, like market price suggests, for either version, and definitely see it recover back to 30 plus in time as Modern continues to shake out and that card just becomes better and better and better.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring that up before we moved on to our final format. The Great Pauper Debate. So,
all right. You start. I don't want to get on into a rant on this yet.
Over the past week, I've been following Brian DeMars pretty actively because he looked super excited about this upcoming BNR, and I thought he would be extremely upset about two things. One, again, no clarification as to why there were no changes made to this format, and two, no changes made to this format. He asked a question on Twitter, I think on Friday, basically ahead of his weekend, so he could just see what the results could be. Name the best non-blue, non-artifact, non-land color in Pauper. And a handful of people came back with green, but the majority of the results that came back with a color in specific cards wound up being red because it has Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast.
Yeah.
So it takes care of blue. And Arkham's Astrolabe has basically been ubiquitous in this format since its release. Checking the metagame for Pauper on Goldfish earlier today, it's basically in every deck that isn't Burn, Elves, or Affinity. Oh, Mono Black Control, sorry. 4 decks out of the top 12 aren't playing Astrolabe as a free redraw. And Mono Black Control could honestly play it if it wanted to, but it wasn't a deck that played Gitaxian Probe in the first place, which is what Astrolabe replaces. So, as a person who just watches this format and doesn't really have a Pauper scene up here, I'm kind of unimpressed that nothing was done because from everything I've seen from, public figures like Brian DeMars and BDM all the way through to the subreddit that was just created today, people were just really curious as to why. What data did you look at that suggested that no changes need to be made? And why did you come to that conclusion from that data? So...
There was about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. There was a MCQ that was done on Moto, and it was Pauper.
Yep.
And of 32 possible copies of Astrolabe, 28 were in the top 8. It was 6 Jeskai lists, a Tron list, running Astrolabe because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And Elves, which doesn't care. It draws a million cards anyways. It doesn't need to filter mana that doesn't also, swing.
Yep.
I don't know how you can't hit Astrolabe, how you can't hit Ephemerate, whatever. Even the Moto results. Did you look at that? Because it's obvious that it's a problem. And you're not touching it, and financially, look, at this point, if you were holding off on your foil Astrolabes, pick them up.
Yep.
It's going to get banned eventually, but Astrolabe control isn't going anywhere in Legacy, and Legacy players also love foils. So you may lose a little bit, but who cares? There's plenty of opportunity there. There's opportunity for... I think, surprisingly enough, and you mentioned it earlier, Magmatic Rift is becoming more and more played in... what?
Sinkhole? Magmatic Sinkhole?
Or, yeah, Magmatic Sinkhole, sorry. Yeah. Magmatic Sinkhole is becoming more and more played in these Jeskai lists that are just running rampant all over Pauper right now.
Churn through cards, no way to recur, so you just pick up the most efficient removal spell for you.
Yeah, great. 5 damage to whatever dude you have. It kills Gurmag Angler, which is one of the biggest threats in the format. Why wouldn't you run it?
Absolutely.
And it is infuriating to me that the format, which existed almost exclusively on Moto for a long time, which is where they pull so much of this data from, they're like, don't worry about it. We got this arena thing now. That's just dumb.
Why bother?
Dumb.
Oh, 100%.
And, it's interesting because next to Modern, Pauper's probably the most popular format in St. Louis.
Okay.
It fires multiple stores every week, and it without fail, you'll see some number of the Jeskai lists there, and inevitably they're going to be in the finals. They're one of the best decks, if not the best.
I At Vegas,
And
one of my locals said he wasn't playing in the Modern main because the only decision to make was whether or not he wanted to play Hogak or lose. So he was playing Pauper, where he could play Jeskai and actually make decisions that impacted the game.
Yeah. And it's, it is still, and I love the format because that is true. Like, no matter what, you constantly feel like you're doing something that impacts the game.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're getting to the point where, in this format, you have Boros decks splashing green for Pulse, Weather the Storm, splashing black for ninjas, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
There's a problem here. And, one of the things is, like, I'm not sure that Astrolabe even does that much if you don't also ban Ephemerate or something. Because the only reason they're running Astrolabe in the Jeskai list is so they can run stuff like Skred.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they just drop Skred and run Journey to Nowhere. It's the same thing.
Yep.
I don't think this was good for the format or for the financial aspect, other than meaning it's probably safe to pick up foil Astrolabes for maybe another month.
Yeah, the Astrolabe itself is definitely a card, disregarding Pauper, that should not be $1.26.
Agreed.
Or $1.25, right? I tweeted about that a while ago, and there are people that just didn't understand how the non-foil copy of this card is so cheap when the foil is 20.
Yeah.
Sure, it's a common that came out of Modern Horizons, but we know we're not getting any more Modern Horizons this year. That's it. We're done. There are other more important supplementals that need to be printed to make up for limited releases for whatever reason they decided to do that. But it's a card that has just become an immediate pillar and should be treated as such. The one thing that I found really interesting was taking a look at the Pauper metagame on Goldfish, because I wanted to see if there was a deck up here that I'd heard about, but there wasn't. In the top 12, there's 1, 2, 3 mono-color decks, and it's mono-green aggro, mono-black control, and burn. Everything else is multiple colors, which I expected, except for the fact that they're now all able to splash green and or black because of Astrolabe and nothing else. Like, I knew there was a 5-color Tron list. I've heard about that. That was a years past thing, right? They could do that. It wasn't a big deal. To slap Astrolabe into Tron doesn't really change the deck a whole lot. Same thing with Elves, because you can just filter through your Elves, but they don't need it anyway, like you said. What was interesting to see was Boros Aggro is a 4-color list right now. Skred is a 4-color list right now. Inside Out combo, which is basically the Tireless Tracker inversion combo, is a 4-color deck now. It gets white and it gets green now because of Astrolabe. Whiteout is the green card. All creatures with flying lose flying until EOT. If it's in your graveyard, you may sack a snow-covered land to return it to your hand. So you basically just keep taking Delvers out of the sky.
Yeah.
Or whatever flyers exist in the format now. And now there's a 4-color Bogles list.
Yeah. And Bogle's got a new card in Throne, too. The all that sparkles, all that glitters or whatever. I mean, and they have Astrolabe. Yeah. Sure,
why not? It's not
sorry, it's an uncommon. It didn't get it in Pauper, just modern.
That's fine. It's technically a 3-color main. They're counting Slippery Bogle as a blue card, but there are 2 dispels in the sideboard, being splashed off of exactly 0 non-forest, non-plane lands.
Yeah.
But for Astrolabe.
Yeah. I mean, you've got Fling in the list now, Electrickeries, Mox Monkeys. Like, there's so much there that's just like, all right, I guess this is wholly unintentional, I think. I don't think it, by any means, Wizards wanted this to happen.
No,
I just think this is what happened to Pauper because of that.
Yeah, Astrolabe just happened to do this. I don't think they meant to do this. There's no way. It's much like I was thinking about Urza earlier when they announced Modern Horizons. They said they wanted to add to the format and not warp it, but that's exactly what Hogak and Urza did to the modern format, was warp it. Hogak a little more than Urza. And I think this is just another one of those cards that just kind of got swept away through play design because they care about the format, but not enough to really sit down
and get into the minutia of it and figure out, like, hey, this is bad.
Exactly. But the nice part is that while this does shake up the format, it really doesn't change a lot besides continue to push Delver down, prop up other strategies, make the format a little healthier in that regard, and kind of negate the ennui that was Pauper for about 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
And I get that's fine. As somebody who's not a Pauper player, I'm not seeing a whole lot of people can complain about anything besides the ubiquity of Arkham's Astrolabe in the format, which is kind of a reason they got rid of Git Probe in the first place.
Yeah.
Sure, you don't have Peak attached to it, but it's still free card draw that smooths out everybody's deck and allows them to just play their game, uninterrupted. Uninterrupted, quote unquote.
And it creates this weird situation where, like, it's similar to Mental Misstep, right? So Mental Misstep was just restricted or whatever in Vintage because every deck ran it.
Yes.
If you're going to use that argument, you can't pick and choose when you use it if it's creating a negative effect on the metagame.
Yeah.
And I think that, you don't run a 56-card deck because every deck would just run that card, and that's exactly what you're looking at in Pauper right now, is basically every deck is 56 cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, for whatever reason, they don't want to use their already existing logic on Astrolabe, but it could also be, like I said, because it doesn't break the format. Like, that's...
Yeah. Format defining, not format warping, or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess that's okay, like I said, as the non-Pauper player. Again, what I didn't like about this was just the lack of clarity and the fact that really it's just status quo for Pauper, and the only big thing is you get your Astrolabes, you get your Sinkholes, foil or not, no matter what, these cards are being played in this format. That's really, the financial aspect of things. There was supposedly a Jeskai combo deck coming up with a name that I'd never heard of before, and I couldn't find anything about it, like in my 10 minutes of research before the cast. But
yeah,
it's not, as far as I can tell, it hasn't taken over the format, and things are just kind of cruising along. Like, if you have a Pauper player base by you, then you definitely want to look at Astrolabes, Sinkholes, some of the Bogle stuff as pickups to trade in your local environment. Everything else has basically just been Pauper playable for a fairly large amount of time. I don't think there's anything really new on the block, so to speak. Some of the elf stuff might be worth picking up, but not because of Astrolabe, just because it's hard to find a lot of the Onslaught guys.
Yeah.
Anyway. But I don't think there's a lot here in terms of financials. Utopia Sprawl, maybe. But it's a $3 card at one point because it hadn't been reprinted.
And then it was, and all of a sudden it's bulk again.
Yeah.
But it'll get there. EDH exists. Oh, I guess it's still $2, so yeah.
Yeah, 4 for the Dissension copy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you need the mono green Devotion deck to do anything in Modern to really see that card bump. That's kind of where it happened. Or Ponza. They both run that card.
Yeah, Ponza I love Ponza. I would love to see that do things again, but yeah.
Maybe it needs a good solid finisher instead of a myriad of big old dummies that do nothing to forward your game plan.
Yeah, agreed.
There's that worm. No, that actually only affects you. Never mind. There's the Saga Worm. It was like a 6/6 for 4, but you had to sack a land. So.
Yeah, the Shivan Worm from Planar Chaos.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the shifted one, but yeah.
I mean that's all we got for this week. Let's see if there's anything you wanted to talk about.
Nope, that's it.
All right. So before we head out, picks for the week. I'll let you go first. Yours is a little more interesting than mine.
Yeah, mine. So, you've started to see masterpieces, expeditions, stuff like that start to dry up, and I don't know if it's people that are like, oh, I'm going to finish off my collection or whatever the case is. But I was looking around and seeing, how this impacted things basically. And stumbled upon a Yu-Gi-Oh! Proxy that I forgot existed, and that is Divert. So the Yu-Gi-Oh! One from Amonkhet. So the invocation of this is the low-hanging fruit of the invocations. It's $14. It's not a great card by any stretch of the imagination, but when people decide that, well, it's time for me to finish this, I'm going to pick up all my invocations, whatever else. What's the one card that nobody's been actively picking up at all this time?
Mm-hmm.
Divert. It's not played in EDH like Boil or Desolation Angel, which are also on the lower end. It's not played in anything really. Even Odyssey Block, as far as I know, it wasn't played. And at $15, it seems pretty low.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that we'll ever see this card hit 100 by any means, but I don't think that 30 to 40 is entirely unreasonable for it. At which point, $15 is a great buy list price.
Yeah.
People have it sitting around. They're not doing anything with it. There's no one with an absurd emotional attachment to this card.
No.
Like, maybe Spell Pierce or something like that. So it should be pretty easy to pick up. And I just think that long term, once people start picking up their invocations and finishing their collections out of this stuff, it'll start to see a move. Additionally, the numerical list of how many prices we have over the last month has gone from about 70, 72-ish, and we're now down to 58, which isn't a huge dip, except that unlike other invocations, there haven't been new sellers popping up.
Yeah.
So it's just the quantity that was there that's gradually diminishing, and we're not seeing new ones come up for it.
Yeah, this is basically going to be the Tango Land equivalent of invocations. You need them to finish out your cycle, right? But they are definitely the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
In that regard, I'm not a huge fan of this pick because I don't like the invocation system, but as far as the
Yu-Gi-Oh! Proxies are bad.
Well, the thought behind this is great. You're looking at something that is a very limited print run, where you do have a collector's audience in the sense that people do want to finish these sets, right? So where do you go? You don't go for the top because this is an underground sea.
Yeah.
You go from the bottom because that's what has the largest floor, largest distance
largest
to a new
room
floor.
to grow. Yeah.
And so I think personally, like I said, not a huge fan, but I like the idea behind it, and I think this is a kind of an important thing for people to learn about too, especially with all the random ways that you can now acquire a card from Throne of Eldraine. Eventually, the same thing is going to be applicable to Eldraine and whatever sets they want to do this to. So people have got to learn that sometimes the action isn't at the top, where the highest price thing or the hottest ticket item. You need to start looking at the low end of things because those are the ones that are always dragging. You could buy plateaus for $30 up to maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and if you just sat on them, they got to be close to 60 now.
Buy list is about 50 to 60 at most GPs. So yeah.
Yep. Right now, a revised plateau has a market value of 132, an average of 128. So they're fairly close, right?
Yeah.
You could buy those for $30 while Underground Sea was still over $300.
Yeah.
If you're looking to complete your set, then you need to start from the top and work your way down because that card will cost you the most now. It will cost you the most in the future, too. It's easier to spend those funds up front or budget for that thing that you know is going to be a while. Whereas the lagging piece, when you're finishing your collection, makes a little more sense to pick up later. If you're looking to make money, though, it's the opposite. You want to start at the low end because you can sit on that for a while and hold it. And it's an important lesson.
It's fair.
I like that pick for that reason. My pick is a little more obvious for 2 weeks ago, if we were following the arena timeline, and that is Torbrand, Thane of Redfell.
Yeah.
When Eldraine first hit Moto, it was one of, I think, 4 rares in the mono red deck that just tore it up for a couple of days. There was this, Javier, Fires, and Chandra.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 rares. When I initially picked mine up, Thorbrand was under $2, and as I was watching the deck function, it was the card that let that deck win. As long as your opponent didn't sit there and gain a ton of life, like the Sultai deck starts to do, or the Golos deck now, you could get around and over anything with Torbrand and that enchantment. That whenever you attack, it pings your opponent because now you're pinging for bolts. You're not pinging for lava darts, and that adds up very quickly.
Yeah.
So this definitely has legs when you're looking at mono red in the standard format. The other thing is going back and looking at EDHs. Isn't in a whole lot of decks right now, but a lot of the weird cards that people play in EDH, like Mana Barbs, are starting to crop up on the list of cards that are synergistic. And podcasts like EDH Rec have talked about Torbrand on a number of occasions already as being one of the best commanders for mono red.
Yeah.
What suppresses this right now isn't the fact that it's not really being played because mono red doesn't have a place in standard right now. It's the fact that you can get this card in like 5 different variations.
Dumbest thing. I think it was in the Discord when you were like, you did the math, and there's like 1,100 unique cards in this set.
Yeah, it's like 13 and change. Over 1,300 unique versions of cards in this single standard set. So before, when you were looking at standard, you had the number in the set times 2 plus the Planeswalker deck uniques, whatever supplementals. Now you have all of that plus the unique stuff in the collector's booster packs and every edition that you can get that card in. So there's like 1,300, almost 1,400 unique cards in this set compared to under like 8 previously. It's ridiculous.
Woo!
Exactly. It's friggin' thrilling. But this is a card that right now sits at $2.25-ish, $2. And can go to 5 pretty quickly and pretty easily if the mono red deck takes off. If anything is done about the Field of the Dead decks, if people realize that you can start playing Tybalt and negate a little bit of that life gain and find a way around these zombie tokens, he definitely becomes the cornerstone of that deck. He's not a finisher in that deck. He doesn't end the game on the spot. He's what allows you to get from the mid-game to the finish line. You know?
Yeah.
It is the card that probably puts in the most work aside from your 1 and your 2 drops. Or Fires, which is a 2-drop. And this is the card that is just going to continue to see play outside of Standard for years to come with an EDH. Be it the Commander or in the 99, it's going to be a sought-after card. When you look at this and you look at things like Furnace of Wrath and you look at Gisela, Knight of... or the gold Gisela, the red-white one, right?
Yeah.
Furnace of Wrath for you, half damage for your opponents. Her?
Yeah.
He basically slots right in there into that Boros deck, or like I said, as the mono red commander where you just want to ping people out with 1 damage that suddenly turns into 3, or 2 into 4. So this is a card that you can probably pick up for a fairly long period of time for under $2 until, like I said, something is done with standard format. And then once you have your copies, if you want to keep picking them up, that's fine. It should see a jump to $5 and hold for another fairly long amount of time, but it's just going to be another long-term gainer. This is not going to be a short sell. Foils right now are about $8, and I think that's probably appropriate even long-term, unless the mono red deck becomes the deck to play.
Yeah.
So unless you naturally crack a foil or you can find them for about $5, I don't think I would necessarily move it on foils just because they might be somewhere around their ceiling right now. And that is just the foil set. That's not the...
full art, the promo pack, the whatever.
On and on and on.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's also going to muddy the waters a little bit in regards to this card. And then, of course, and this is, I think, going to be a statement for anything in Eldraine. Anything that can be a commander from Eldraine, it's most likely going to be the pimpest version that is going to hold the highest price tag regardless of what card it is.
Yeah.
If Thorbrand is going to be the commander moving forward for mono red, then it's going to be most likely the full art the border. Yeah. The full art looks the best. The borderless foil is technically the pimpest because it can only come in the collector's boosters.
Yeah.
Which you could get at big box retail for about $4 a piece over the last weekend. That was also fantastic to find out. So, I'm recommending the non-foil. If you want to move it on anything, then I would say sit on your heels, wait for pricing to fall out a little bit, and then see over time, over the next, let's say, 2 weeks, which Thor brand kind of pops up above the others in regards to the foils, and then that would be the one I would move in on if I was going to be buying the foils.
Yeah.
But that's where I am.
I think that's safe as well. I think, it's easy for people to jump in and forget that week 1 standard is a tire fire.
Yeah.
And everyone, buys in on Golos, they buy in on Field, everything else, like you said, and you leave stuff behind like Torbran.
Yep.
Because he's the answer to that, and it's making the meta call that, like, well, you're not going to make money reacting. You've got to be proactive, and I think it's a smart pick.
Yeah, you can also see Brawl play too.
Yeah,
because that's going to be
Brawl,
thing.
Especially if Brawl sticks around this time, red aggro tends to be pretty good in 1-on-1.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and if he's your general, you're starting to look at some pretty quick damage over time, starting really early in that game. So
yeah.
This is definitely, I think, something that's going to require a little more attention than the other picks that we've made, just because so many versions, so many ways to play them coming up.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to turn out to be a worthwhile pick.
Agreed.
think with that is our cast for the week. Got anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. We are at MTG Cabalcast on Twitter and Patreon, and we are still taking applicants for the UMA Box giveaway. All you need to do is just join at any rank, and you'll get entered into that giveaway.
Yep.
Otherwise, I am at Halt, I am Reptar on Twitter, and in subreddits randomly.
I am at Thirsty Sizzler on the Twitter.
And you can catch us here next week.
Yep. Thanks, guys.